Welcome to the TrueMindShifters channel. In this channel, we share true stories of our own lives about overcoming fear, shame, and guilt so that you don't feel alone in your journey and you feel supported along the way to becoming your best self. While Maureen is not available to record this week, I sure hope that this story reaches you and helps you in your journey to become your best self. We've spent a lot of time talking about fear and issues associated with fear of a lot of different topics so far. And I have an interesting perspective based on what I've seen happen when rifts occur in a relationship. If you find this topic interesting and think others may benefit from it as well, please like, subscribe, and share this content so it can amplify the goodness of this channel. So I have some powerful insights after going through a number of difficult patches in relationships, one of which is my marriage, which I've been very open about with people close to me in my personal life. I have an insight that I hope helps add perspective to when things go wrong in a relationship or things don't feel good in a relationship. And I do want to start with that if there is abuse, that people take that very seriously, get help, talk openly with others about what's really going on, and be safe. Backing up to my own marriage, there have been times of separation, and the separation didn't mean I didn't love my partner. The separation meant I can't live with what I have right now. And it needs to be different. I think for most of that time, I would think of all the things that the other person did wrong. And it was pretty glaring, pretty obvious. And I could get a lot of people to agree with what was happening was wrong. And at the same time, there is an element of what I could do. And while I may not have been the one to lose my temper, I may not have been the one to snap or etc., do different things, I was not being helpful. And I was not sitting in a space able to be objective when I saw my partner struggle. And I'm sharing this because sometimes when we're in an exchange and we're in a disagreement, a conflict, it's very easy for us to default to our coping mechanism of fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And there's some fight I have or freeze, but I do have some fight and I would defend myself. So I start that with, here's the context. So there's conflict in a relationship. The blaming happens right away. The pointing fingers happens right away at times if you're both in a defensive stance against what's happening. All right, so that's the stage that's set. And then there's what happens when you talk about this conflict, seeking support with friends and family. There are different ways you can talk about things, right? You can talk about things with a friend, you can complain, you can vent, you can get help in therapy. But I've realized a couple of things about the talking about with other people. Our friends will oftentimes see things similarly and want to protect us. So we may not see fully the things that we're not doing that well to make a situation better. It can feel good to have someone put their arm around you or empathize with you, etc. But at some point, the question of what was I doing to help the situation be better? I would not receive that type of question from my friends. And that's not a diss against my friends. I have amazing friends. But I had this realization that I wasn't hearing information from my friends to encourage self-reflection. There was empathy, there was support that reinforced my arrival at not feeling good about something, and that I'm entitled to not feel good about it. And no one would argue that I wasn't entitled. But it's interesting that if you seek support and that you're hearing that you're entitled to your anger, or you should just leave, or it's okay to be upset, and it can sort of set you into a groove that doesn't flex or change or grow. So this is a recent realization, and I think it's important for people to think about this. If there's some sort of conflict happening, are we asking ourselves, and when we hear other people in conflict, is there anything you can think about that you could do differently to help the situation be better? And then focus on that. So that's part one of these thoughts I'm having about, when I look at my relationship, which has endured many years of difficulty and has arrived in a much healthier place. It's that realization there are things that I could be doing differently to help it be better. And when my partner struggles, I see it as that, not as an attack, but that my partner is struggling. And what can I do to help? Sometimes that's hard, but sometimes we need support more than we need to be corrected. I think because I grew up in a very diverse background, but there was a lot in part of my family, a lot of correcting. So I'm very quick to correct my husband, quick to correct the children I'm raising. And sometimes people don't need in the moment to be corrected. They might need support instead. Or why would you do that? Sometimes people don't need to be questioned. They need to be supported through what they're going through. And I'm not suggesting becoming a punching bag and letting people just unload on you and abuse you. But if there's something that's happening that's specific to them and they're struggling, the struggle can look ugly sometimes. And if there's something that we can do to offer our support through that struggle, then our best selves would offer that. So what I was realizing in my own life is I wasn't supportive when my partner would have issues. I would take offense and I would become defensive. And then I would talk to people. Now, this is the second part of this insight. At some point, I would share different things that happened. I would share my perspective of the conflict. And I saw people do what I call make a square out of a circle. So if you picture a relationship and the union of two people as a circle, then there aren't really sides you get behind. You support the entity, the entirety of the union. However, when we speak of our conflict as though we are victims, and again, I'm not talking about dangerous, abusive situations, But our conflict with our partner is a sign that someone needs help. Someone is struggling, and there is something to learn. If we're constantly finding ourselves defending, attacking, and positioning, it will turn a circle into a square, and sides will be formed and taken. And the moment we put the sides, the corners into the dynamic of a relationship, we're not working in the space of a circle. We're not unified. It's not even. And there is opposition, right? That's what different sides are. They're opposite to each other. In relationships, creating sides will not unify you. And so if we shift our behavior from looking at those differences, sides against other sides, and we invite others to say what they need and what we need, and we both share what we need and share what's in common and share our desires and share our dreams, our hopes, and what we can do to make that a reality. It opens up a whole new world of possibilities for the relationship. But each person has to do that individually. And when it comes to the people outside of that relationship who are witnessing that relationship, right, as a square versus a circle, people are going to be divided too. So the main takeaway is conflict presents these dynamics that we will do things to defend ourselves that may not serve the relationship or our own growth. So if we can step back, if we can self-reflect, and if we can make sure that we're asking ourselves, what can I do to make this situation better? What can I do to help this person feel better? And then be mindful of when we're talking about it with other people, are they perceiving this as something they need to take sides on? I'll never forget when I was in deep conflict with my husband, my stepmother-in-law said, no one will ever understand what goes on between a husband and a wife or partners like in a marriage. No one ever knows. No one ever truly knows what happens inside that union, except those two people. No one ever knows. And frankly, she was the person who helped me realize the power of a union and how beautiful it was to hear from her perspective that she was not going to judge either one of us for what was happening and the difficulties we were having. She saw us as a union, as a circle. Not everybody saw it that way. People took sides. And I just have to say, if more people can look at relationships, doesn't even have to be marriages per se, but if more people can look at the connections that people have and say, what are you doing to help foster that connection? What's everybody doing? And encourage other people to foster the connection, because no one really does understand what happens in any relationship, frankly, except between those two people themselves, a marriage or any other relationship for that matter. So clearly not all relationships have the same sanctity or air quotes permanence as a marriage. Not everybody has that same level of commitment, but when you forge a relationship, it is a union of sorts. Not all relationships are as long lasting or have the same level of commitment as a marriage per se. But the point is, relationships are what we create. And in conflict, we have an opportunity to be able to discover our best selves. And it's beyond the coping. Your best self is not in the coping. Your best self is in getting through and then supporting and not just thinking of yourself. Well, that's all for this week. I hope this story of my own insights related to conflict help you in your life as you seek to overcome fear, shame, and guilt, and that you feel support, empowerment, and love.